Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. We're so excited to have you all. We'll get started right at noon here on Eastern time, so just in a couple of minutes, but just wanted to open up the room and let everybody get settled into the webinar and just confirm we're here, we're ready to go. I'm excited to have all of you. If you do want to drop in the chat your name and what organization you're with and maybe where you're located, that type of information is always super interesting for us and kind of a fun way to share at the beginning of the webinar. Also, just to let you know, your microphones are all on mute and will be for the entire webinar. You will have the opportunity to ask questions and chat, and I'll share a little bit more about that here in a minute when we get kicked off. Okay, everyone, we are right on time and going to go ahead and get started. We're thrilled that you're joining us today. I am really excited about this webinar and feel like it's the type of content that our customers and our colleagues are really hungry for when it comes to actionable content that you're going to be able to walk away, learn something new, have a plan, and move forward. And I'm just really excited about that. There's not a lot of fluff here, and I know we're pretty content heavy, and we have two experts joining us. So we have Erin Hedges, who's the founder and the president of Hedges, and Kara Harrison, who's their director of capacity building services. They're nationally recognized for their work in governance, fundraising, and nonprofit leadership, things we love here at Boardable, talk about a lot, do a lot about. And they're going to share exact tools and frameworks that they use to help create high-performing boards among their clients. So just a few housekeeping things from me, and then I'll wrap up at the end of the webinar as well. But for the most part, you're going to be in great hands with Erin and Kara. So if you have any questions at any point, I encourage you to use the questions tab. That tab really allows us and our team to keep track of anything that you want to have a follow-up on. If you have a specific Boardable question, if you have a specific Hedges question, we'll make sure those questions get answered. And we'll also try to have a few minutes maybe for some Q&A at the end. So certainly encourage you to put all of that in the questions tab. In the chat tab, we want to keep this interactive as much as possible with the big group that we have today. So in the chat tab, you can drop in other thoughts that you have, other resources, things that you think others might be helpful or share, or if you just kind of agree with the sentiment. We always love to have those types of comments in the chat section as well. A recording and follow-up resource will be sent to you after this webinar. You'll actually get the recording very shortly after the webinar, and we'll make sure we get all of those resources back to you as well. I think I've hit all of the housekeeping things. I'll be available in chat as well if you guys need anything throughout. There's a ton of great content waiting, so I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Kara and Erin. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you, Boardable, for this opportunity to be with you all today. We have a great turnout, and we know this is a hot topic, which is one of the reasons why we love talking about it, because it's something that either whether you're a board member or you're an executive leader, having a high-performing board is critical to your mission. And so we love helping organizations strengthen their boards. So thanks for making time for being with us today. So a little bit about Hedges. If you don't know who we are, we've been in the business for over 20 years. We have a team of 8 nonprofit experts. I say nonprofit, our folks have been on boards, we have supported boards, and we've been executive leaders and other members of leadership staff in the nonprofit sector. We've worked with about 175 nonprofit organizations, foundations, and corporations throughout the country. We really focus our work in 2 areas. One is capacity building services, of which we consider board support. So we do a lot of board assessments, tools, and resources to help boards become more impactful. We do a lot of strategic planning work, which we'll touch on here actually a little bit. We talk about vision and mission and values updates. We provide action planning. We can help nonprofits assess their organizational strength. And we provide lots and lots of workshops and trainings like we're doing today. We also provide a lot of grant services for nonprofits who like to outsource their grants work. So everything from grant writing, strategy and project management around those grants to funder research and grants readiness assessments and workshops and trainings. So now that you know a little bit about Hedges, let me tell you a little bit about your trainers for today. My name is Erin Hedges, as Jenny shared, and you have me and you have Kara Harrison, who's our Director of Capacity Building Services. Both of us have led the work of creating our board training content over the last 5 years, and we've both been trained by BoardSource. And so here's my plug for BoardSource. If you are not familiar with this organization, please jot it down or take a moment to go look at their, write it down, and go check them out later, because they are really one of the leading areas of practice for nonprofit board governance. There are so many free resources, and they do lots of research in this topic across the country. And they also have a membership option. So if you want to be a member, you can have access to even greater amounts of data and information around board governance. So tip for BoardSource there. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into our content. We want to get you going here with a little bit of an icebreaker and a warm-up. In the chat, please describe what one word you would use, or you wish you could use, to describe your board. Okay, so what is one word you wish you could use to describe your board? Okay, eager to hear what folks would say. Efficient, connected, high-functioning, passionate, engaged, a team. You see lots of engaged, more time, effective, strategic. Oh, these are good. I hope we can capture these in a word cloud. These are great. Efficient, cohesive. Yeah. Well-motivated, electronically savvy, fundraisers. Woo-hoo, we're going to talk about that a little bit today. Action-oriented, activated, actionable. We're going to talk about actionizing a little bit today as well. Good, good. Okay, great. Well, keep them coming. And again, I really do want to figure out how we can make a word cloud out of this little chat. But thank you. Thank you for participating. So let's go ahead and jump into what our objectives are for today. And Kara's going to do that for us.
Yeah, it was like, if that could be a word cloud, I feel like it would be like one big engaged, right? Engaged. We want our boards to be engaged. Absolutely. Well, I'm excited and eager to keep going back to that too, and figuring out how we can tie the content of today to the board that you want to have, the board that you wish you had. And so today we're going to focus on these 3 characteristics of high performing boards. So this is what we've seen and what we've utilized in leading practices. When we see really high performing boards, these are things that they have in common. Now, we've pulled from over 50 hours of training content that Hedges has to bring these 3 forward for this 1 hour. So just please know, a lot of this can be a deeper dive, and we have many, many more hours of content, but we've got 1 hour with you, so we want to maximize that. So this is where we're going to focus today. And as we talk through each characteristic, we'll highlight best practices. Hopefully these priorities can help inform how the board operates, how you want the board to operate as you work toward achieving your organization goals. Okay. And as we talk about best practices related to these characteristics, keep in mind, these are not just based on the experience of Hedges, but these are universally accepted best practices based on research from sources like we've already mentioned, BoardSource, but also GuideStar and the Center for Nonprofit Excellence. So very comprehensive different sources that we've pulled together for this topic. All right, so let's dive into that first: recruitment, election, and onboarding. We have a poll that we're going to go ahead and launch, really just trying to assess which governance activities does your board currently implement as a formal process. So that should pop up for you right now. And if you could just go ahead and select all that apply. Is your board formally doing strategic board member recruitment, board member election, onboarding? Maybe you're unsure, or maybe it's not applicable because you're not on a board yet, or so just go ahead and take a minute there and respond to that poll. Okay. I'm going to give it about 10 more seconds. Right now, it looks like about 32% of respondents have a board member election. That's great. 29% have strategic board member recruitment. 26% have an onboarding. I am so excited to see that. That's great. More than I was expecting, so that's phenomenal. And then 6% are unsure. So really pretty even split about a formal process. But still about average, only 30% of you have those formal processes. So we're going to talk through what those formal processes can look like and some leading practices and tips and tricks to put those into place because they're so important, right? So let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, so looking at strategic board recruitment. The number one thing here, the number one takeaway in your strategic board recruitment efforts is to take the time to get it right. This deserves intentionality. This idea of recruitment strategically deserves intentionality because that really sets the foundation for the type of board you will have, right? Those that you are recruiting and your recruitment process sets the stage for the type of board you will have. So many of you said you wanted an engaged board. So recruiting people that you know are committed to that engagement level. And we'll talk about how to set that as we move through, but just thinking through your recruitment efforts and that they're matching what you're trying to have. So a couple of tips here. When recruiting, it's really important that you're seeking diversity. One way that you can seek diversity on your board is to use a board matrix. I'm sure many of you do utilize a board matrix. That helps you to identify missing skills and perspectives. If you go to our friends at BoardSource, they have a great example about a board matrix that you can utilize. But this really allows you to not only know and have a snapshot of who's on the board, but to identify where do you want to recruit. So if you notice you have quite a large gap in, let's say, financial expertise, that allows you to strategically recruit a board member that brings that expertise. This also allows you to, as you're thinking through your recruitment efforts and what spaces you go into, to do that in a really strategic way. Our second step there is to recruit candidates based on specific organizational needs. So a lot of times we might take on anyone who might be interested in our mission, and that's great. And there is a place for anybody who's interested in your mission as a part of your organization. But having board members that are meeting the needs of your organization. So for example, if you know you're going to start a program and you need a specific expertise for that program, recruiting board members that fill that need, and you're really aligning to what your organization needs. Having a formal application process. Now, this maybe doesn't sound like a lot of fun, but I promise it will pay off in the end. But having a formal application process that not only allows you to get to know your potential board member, but also there's a lot that can be said about the organization in that application. For that potential board member to know right away the things that the organization might be interested in or the things the organization prioritizes is really telling to that person. So you can kind of draw a similar line to an application for a staff position. What kind of questions are you asking there? Now, it might not be in depth, but it's still the same idea. This parallels to bringing on a staff person. You want to have multiple touch points, including an interview, quote unquote, as you see there, but that interview could be a coffee chat. It could be a conversation over lunch. Again, just multiple touch points to ensure that you're really getting to know that person and ensuring that you're also sharing about the organization, the things that matter. So for example, going back to this idea that we want engaged board members. How often are we having conversations in that touch point that says, you know, to be on this board, to really be an engaged board member, we are really expecting about 7 hours of your time a month, or whatever that is for your organization. Are we opening up the door to those really specific conversations that really shows what an engaged and successful board member does for the organization? Now, in recruitment, this is the time to get really clear on your responsibilities and expectations of both time and financial contributions. So the example that I just shared about knowing how much time do you expect your board members to give, and then sharing that is something that you want to do. Additionally, if there's any financial expectations, we want to have those conversations early on in this recruitment effort, right? No surprises down the line. That's always the goal. We don't want a board member to get into a board room 3 months into their board membership and hear that they are expected to participate in fundraising. We want them to know that before they even sign on. No surprises down the road. And then ongoing process to ensure that talent pipeline. So just making sure that we are thinking long-term in our recruitment efforts. A lot of organizations will find success in bringing on community members onto their committees. And this is a way to really build that talent pipeline onto your board. So if you have a individual who's on a committee, but is not on the board, then that allows them to get to know the organization. And maybe in a few years, they'll be ready to move into that board role. So that's a long-term strategy that can be really successful. Just note, you don't have to vote on everybody that wants to join the board, right? We can be really strategic and make sure that it aligns to what the organization needs. Okay. Now, I will just say, as we move along here, we might have a lot of content on slides, and the purpose is that you will utilize this as a resource moving forward. So just forgive us if we start to get very content heavy as we move forward. We just want it to be something that you can utilize as you move along. So let's talk about our election process. I think this was the process that was most common used as a formal process for most organizations. So having a formal recruitment process complete, these are the things that you want to make sure that you're doing. So as we go into our election, we've done our formal recruitment, meaning we've gotten to know the individual pretty well. We understand the need that they fill within our organization. We've had the opportunity to share what's important to us as an organization, where we're headed. We feel like this is a mutually beneficial relationship, right? So then you move into really formally nominating board members. One thing that we see often gets missed in this election process is that the other board members, the standing board members, maybe don't feel like they have enough information about potential board members. And so we're bringing on a board member onto a team that already is working together. And so we just want to make sure that we're welcoming them adequately onto the board. And so part of welcoming them is getting to know them, right? Having the information to either bring them onto the board or decide, maybe not right now is not the best fit, but making sure your board members who are conducting a formal vote have the information they need and they are well informed in that decision is important. So that means it takes time. That means you might be sharing the information you've learned about that person through the application or conversations with the board, letting the board sit with that for a little bit, opening it up for discussion later on so the board can discuss, and then asking for a vote. So that process really could take 2 to 3 months, depending on your schedule. And then let's just make sure we're conducting that formal vote without the person in the room. We see that quite a bit. And so we just want to make sure that we're doing this in a way that is setting everyone up for success later on. Okay. So let's go into our board orientation leading practices. Now, we get board members on, they're incredible, they're going to be a great fit for the organization. And then we throw them into the board meeting, into the organization, and we're like, good luck. Yeah, let's do this. I think what we often forget to do is train them up and set them up for success. We wouldn't hire someone and then just throw them in, right? Part of bringing someone onto a team and integrating them into the organization is setting them up for success through orientation. So based on leading practices from BoardSource and resources from Joan Gary and Forbes Nonprofit Council, we've got some key board orientation leading practices here. So utilizing a formal process that provides board members with access to the organizational documents, people, and processes. So having a really formal documented process that allows them to get to know the organization in writing and the people behind the organization and so forth. So a lot of times organizations will do this over time. It's really hard to fit all of that into one session, so you may decide to do it over a few months. So something to consider, but whatever you're doing, just making sure it's a formal documented process. Providing tools such as a board manual, agenda for the orientation process, slide deck, any other information that you can utilize throughout the orientation process, provide that to your board member so they can be able to reference it and use it later. Giving the information in segments and then utilizing multiple platforms to communicate the information. So again, we don't advise bringing all new board members in for a 2-hour session and saying, okay, that's your orientation, but really advising doing it over time, maybe an hour before the board meeting, maybe recording videos and sending that out, maybe having some things in writing, just different ways to communicate information. A lot of times organizations will invite board members in to observe a program or do a facility tour. Again, that's another way, another platform to communicate information about the organization. Again, going back to that, allowing enough time for orientation. We often, when we see organizations that don't spend enough time in orientation, it can really take board members 3+ years to feel like they really have an understanding of the organization. I think as more formal and the more intentional orientation process is, then that might allow us to kind of quicken and speed up that process of really feeling like they understand the organization and can jump in as a board member. I'm sure many of organizations provide the peer mentor program. This is like a board buddy you might see, but really what it means is it's matching up new board members to existing board members, making sure they know who they can contact if they have any questions. If maybe 5 acronyms were used at the last board meeting, they know who they can contact to ask what that means. You can be as formal or as informal as you'd like. It can be as formal as asking those two to meet for coffee quarterly, or as informal as, let me know if you have any questions. Okay. Involving multiple board members in the process. So don't allow your executive director to totally lead this in isolation. You want to have board members a part of it. At minimum, you're inviting all board members to these orientations so they can have an idea and they can be reminded, right, of the important information, but allowing many individuals to be a part of it. And then check in with the board member just to make sure we're doing okay, just like you would a new employee as they go along. Hey, did you have any questions? Is there anything that I can provide for you to help you feel set up for success? Just making sure you're checking in. And then lastly, making it engaging as possible. As I mentioned, offering different platforms and maybe hosting tours, bringing in program participants to meet board members, just making it as engaging as possible for your organization. Okay. Alrighty, I'm going to keep going here and then I'll check in and see how we're doing on questions. But let's talk about the board manual. So this is really, just important to note that it's beyond the binder, right? This is something that's probably digital now. It is a accumulation of information that's really important for your board members to know about the organization in order to be successful. So at Hedges, we approach much of our work through the 4 pillars of organizational health that you see here on your screen. And this is one way to organize the information you're sharing with your board members. But really thinking about, what do you want your board members to know in each of these areas to be successful? So in our programs and impact, here's what we'd want board members to know. We'd want them to connect with the mission and the impact of the organization, right? We'd want them to align strategic decisions to the vision and mission, and we'd like them to appropriately engage in program oversight. So through those things that you want them to know, you can kind of start thinking about what you would want to include in your board manual. You'd want to include impact stories, your vision, mission, and values. You'd want to even have a document that explains how the board appropriately engages within your organization and program oversight, because that's very different for every nonprofit. Some board members are delivering programs because they're an all volunteer-based organization. Other board members are maybe making long-term program decisions in the boardroom while the staff implement the day-to-day. So really making sure you have a clear understanding of what that looks like for your organization and then communicating it to your board members. In our leadership and culture pillar, here are some of the things you'd want your board members to know to be successful. You'd want them to know how to successfully engage as a leader for the organization, understand and align with your culture as an organization. So this is where you can pull in your values. You'd want them to understand their role in supporting the chief executive. One of those areas that can be such a gray area is, when does the chief executive make a decision? When does the board make a decision? And there are some helpful tools out there that can help you do that, but just having clarity of those roles for your organization. And then you want to make sure your board is equipped with ensuring those legal and ethical integrity pieces. So what are they responsible for as a board member? How are they protected as a board member as well? In our finance and development pillar, we've highlighted you'd want the board to actively support and participate in fundraising efforts, right? I saw a couple wanted their board to be fundraisers. Absolutely. So we're giving them tools to be able to do that successfully. We're setting the expectation first, and then any tools that will be helpful for them in those efforts. And you want them to make informed financial decisions for the organization. So what are we putting in there? We're putting in budgets. We're putting in our policies for how budgets are approved, how the board is looking at those, how often they're looking at them. Maybe we're showing a profit and loss statement and describing it, because we can't assume everybody knows how to read those, right? So there's some training in there as well. And then finally, in our marketing and communications pillar, you want your board members to act as an ambassador for the organization. So what tools and resources can you put in there? Stories, any templates, anything that you can put in the manual to help them be successful in that. You want them to participate in marketing efforts for the organization. So, putting your social media links in there, making sure they go and they follow social media and they share things with their networks. And how can they enhance the organization's public standing? So how would you like the board to engage outside of the boardroom alongside the staff leadership to really act as that ambassador and enhance the public standing of the organization? So just answering these questions can help build and help you think about, what do we need to put in this board manual? How do we need to equip our board members to be successful? Okay, I'm going to go to the chat here, the questions, and see. Okay. Ooh, okay. Well, we might get to that, and I'll go ahead and actually answer that question, even though it'll be a nice segue into our fundraising. The question was, is it a common practice on nonprofit boards to require a personal financial commitment of board members? And yeah, thanks for answering that, Lavon. We've also seen a lot of organizations move to this idea of giving a meaningful, yep, exactly, Lavon. So making sure that you're saying, yes, we'd like all of our board members to give maybe a gift that's meaningful to you. And I think that really segues us nicely into fundraising. What do you think, Erin?
I do, absolutely. Okay, good. Well, let's get into it. So we would like to start with a poll before we jump into our content around how to build your board's responsibility and engagement in fundraising. So we're going to launch a poll here for you. How would you describe your board's engagement in fundraising efforts for the organization? Would you say they're extremely engaged in fundraising efforts, mildly engaged, rarely engaged, unsure, or not applicable? Go ahead and let us know what you think. We're eager to hear where people are sitting on this topic.
While we're letting those go in, I saw in the chat, storing your board manual on Boardable. Yes, one place, everybody has access to it. Nobody's scrambling to figure out where it is. They know exactly where to go for the information and can reference it.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, I think we have our poll complete here. 40% of you feel like your board is, or about 39. Oh, hold on. I'm gonna hold still here for a minute. People are still voting. Here we go. Okay, 39% of you feel that your board is mildly engaged in fundraising efforts. 28% rarely engaged. 22% not applicable. 11% extremely engaged, and 0 answered unsure. Thank you for sharing that. So room for improvement, right? So even the best boards, they're out there, but as a whole, boards aren't great at fundraising. And guess what? It's probably because none of them are trained fundraisers. So, and there's a lot around that, right? So most of the people in this room probably are trained fundraisers, or fundraisers who haven't been formally trained but are doing it anyway because it's part of your job, right? So our hope for this section is to give you some information that you can give to your board members. If you're a board member already, you can take it back to your peers about how you can really move the needle in getting board members more engaged. Okay, so let's dig into some of this content. Okay, so as a board member, we have certain expectations, right? So we talk about the specific expectations that are needed for your organization, but there are also expectations set forth by just general board governance expectations of what you as a board member need to do and to know as good stewards and good fiduciary responsible parties of the organization. So let's dig into what all board members should be doing as it relates to meeting fundraising expectations. And this isn't actually doing any fundraising. So let's go ahead. So when people say they don't want to fundraise for your board, just tell them, A, it's not as hard as you think, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. And B, there are things that you can do that are really, really important that don't involve making an ask. So let's talk about what your strategic mindset needs to be as a board member. What you're looking for as a board member is, does the organization have a strong mission and vision? Why? Because it focuses resources, it focuses efforts, it makes sure that the organization is a good steward of those dollars that are received, and it helps you connect with donors, right? So as a board member, if you're asking the question, do we have a strong vision and mission statement? That is actually a board fundraising expectation, and is something that you can do to strengthen your organization's fundraising success. Similarly, making sure that organization has clear organizational goals can also help in fundraising. Again, it's a way that you can show who your organization is to your current donors and to potential donors, and gives you ways to make those connections. So it's very important that you're able to be clear on your vision, mission, and values as an organization, and it just so happens to support fundraising efforts as well. It's also important for your organization to have a clear strategic plan that guides the priorities and the future of the organization. Now, yes, this is a best practice for organizational effectiveness, but it is also a great tool for fundraising. So you can advocate for having this in the boardroom, making sure you're putting dollars aside or time aside to make sure that your organization has a clear strategic plan that will resonate and move your organization forward, and also help you engage with donors. Here's a great one too. Approving the organizational budget is a responsibility of board members, but including the fundraising budget as well. So as a board member, it's important for you to bring to the table an awareness and acknowledgement that it takes money to raise money. And if the organization is not allocating adequate dollars and resources to fundraising efforts, it's going to struggle to achieve its goals. And so as a board member, you can support fundraising efforts by supporting the resources that need to go into fundraising to make it effective. And a step further, you can review that fund development plan. So every organization should have a plan to raise those dollars. And as a board member, putting eyes on that plan, giving thoughts into that plan can be a way to support your fundraising expectations. Okay, so all of those things didn't involve you raising money, right? Great. So let's go into participation. So what does it mean for board members when we want them to be engaged? Yes, we want every board member to make an annual financial contribution. And we've already talked about the amount of that may not be as important as the actual 100% of our board members give to our organization statistic. Many donors, including institutional funders, want to know that the organization has 100% financial participation. So it is very important for you to do that. Attend fundraising events. This one's easy, right? So go to the events that the organization is working so hard to put on, and introduce your network to the organization. Invite your friends. Have some fun for the good cause. These are great ways for you to support the organization's fundraising efforts. We're going to talk a lot about what we call the 4-part fundraising process here in just a minute. And it's really going to break down ways that the organization can involve its board members and also staff in fundraising. And it doesn't, I'll give you a sneak peek, it doesn't all include solicitation. And then proactively communicating support needed to successfully fundraise. That was a mouthful. But what that means is, if you want to fundraise for the organization and you're willing to make some phone calls or do some invitations, but you don't feel like you have the information needed, whether you need to have more data about the organization's impact, or you need to have more information about a program or an event that's coming up that you'd like to invite your networks to, ask for that information. Okay, just say, I'd love to help you, but I don't have what I need. Sometimes people that are in the trenches don't always realize what information other people don't have. And so by asking for the information and the tools that you need, you can really be doing you and your other board members a service. Okay, so let's talk about oversight. Another big responsibility of board members is, of course, oversight. So as it relates to fundraising, it's important to set fundraising policies and a commitment to ethical fundraising. And that's true across the board. And Kara mentioned that earlier about making sure that you have policies set in place. And there are a couple of additional resources that will be linked here in the slides that we send that can give you a little more information about what we mean by fundraising policies and ethical fundraising. Also, in terms of oversight, prioritizing those resources to support fundraising efforts is good fiduciary oversight. Just want to make sure we say that more than once. And then ensuring realistic fundraising metrics. You know, the average development director, development professional lasts only about 18 months in the position, primarily because expectations of that role are not realistic. And so as a board member, one of the best things that you can do is set realistic fundraising metrics that aren't going to make people run for the hills and look for another role. Okay, and then also as an oversight measure, it's important that the board is making sure the organization is appropriately stewarding funds that are received. And that's more on that finance and pillar development, making sure that you're a good steward and that the dollars are being utilized the way they were intended and shared with donors about. Okay, if you have questions, please drop them in the chat, but I'm going to keep going here and talking a little bit more about fundraising and what we mean by this 4-part fundraising process. So what we like to do when we talk with boards is say that fundraising is not all about the ask. And as those of you who know, who do this work and you're as a board member or as a paid staff member, you know that yes, it's a very important part, but it's not the only part that goes into building your donor base and retaining your donors. So the next few slides, just like all of this deck, but the next few slides we hope will be helpful if you want to share in the boardroom about how your board members can engage more in those fundraising efforts. So there really are 4 overarching parts. There's the identification of donors. There's the cultivation of donors. Of course, there's the ask, that's the solicitation. And then there's the stewardship. Okay, so we're going to unpack each one of these. And again, in hopes that you'll be able to share this information with your fellow board members. Okay, so when we talk about identifying funders or identifying donors as a board member, what do we mean? What do we mean when we want board members to be engaged in that process? So we want them to help us discover and select potential donors who have the financial capacity and alignment with our organization's mission, vision, and values. So how do we go about doing this? Well, we know that our board members are well networked in the community. We know that they probably have friends, family, coworkers, neighbors, other connections in the community with people who may have an interest in your organization. And so what we're hoping board members will do is engage and help us identify new donors to our organization. Now, there's also ways that you can do this by looking at your internal donor data. You can look at your current donor database. You can look at wealth screening tools like Wealth Engine and Donor Search if you're trying to figure out which ones have greater capacity to give. There's other online research tools like social media, ZoomInfo, WealthX, just paying attention to news and media, and even looking at charity searches like in GuideStar and the Foundation directory online. There's lots and lots of ways to identify new prospects. And with board members, it's really their networks that you're asking them to look at. So asking your board members to identify requires them to really think about who they know, but also think through it in the lens of really understanding whether or not the person they know is a true prospect rather than a suspect, right? So a suspect is just anyone we know. A prospect is someone who is qualified by certain indicators that make us think that they might have an interest in giving. So the way we do that is by determining whether or not the donor has interest, whether or not the donor has alignment with the mission, whether the organization or whether the person is linked to the organization already in some way, and whether they have the ability for giving or some kind of partnership. Okay, so these are the kinds of questions that you will want to answer, likely in partnership with your board member if they are the one who has identified this possible donor, to help understand if they might be in a spot where these three things overlap. Okay. So it might be intimidating to say, give us a list of the board of people that you know in the community that you think would be good donors to the organization. Well, how would you know, right? You know, hundreds of people. How would you know if they would be interested? And you certainly don't want to reach out if you don't think they might have even an interest in volunteering or coming to an event. So if you can think through, do you know that they love animals? Do you know that they care about child welfare? Do you know that they care about the environment? If these are the kinds of things that your organization does, and you know some people in your network have similar interests, maybe through your workplace or your career path, you might have that one figured out. In terms of link to the organization, have they ever given before? Have they come to an event? Have they come to an event with you? Some of the ways that maybe they know the executive director or the chief executive officer. Maybe they know someone who's been served by the organization or engaged by the organization's programs. And then the ability, are they philanthropic in nature? Do they give to other causes? So those are the kinds of questions you can ask yourself when you're, as a board member, wondering, do I have any ideas of people who might be a good fit for our organization's donor pool? Okay. So once you have your donors identified, then you want to cultivate, right? And again, this is another process, but this is a process of building and nurturing relationships with those prospective donors through meaningful interactions and communication. So that what we're doing here is we're building relationships, right? So maybe a prospect has a link to your organization, but it's not super strong. Maybe they follow the organization on social media and that's it. Well, how do we go from following an organization on social media to becoming a donor of the organization, right? So let's build the relationship to make that happen. And we do that through engagement. So inviting people to, yes, participate in social media, which is a great way to cultivate donors. What kind of events can we invite them to? What kind of volunteer opportunities, maybe short-term, one-time volunteer opportunities, get them on site, get them experiencing programs? What are the ways that we can engage them and have them take that next step? What are the tailored communications we can give to them by giving them personalized updates on the organization that are aligned with their interests? So if you know a potential donor has an interest in the work that the organization is doing because maybe they've followed on social media or maybe they've volunteered once or twice, what are some updates that you might want to share with them as a board member on a regular basis when you see them next time or when you're just out in conversation that really is aligned with your alignment to the mission and your passion for the mission, and that you can share that excitement with others, okay? And while you're doing all this, you're developing trust. You're developing a relationship and you're developing trust with that potential donor that they can build a relationship with the organization and have closer insights to where their dollars are going once they give. Okay, So we've done our identification, we've done our solicitation, our cultivation, and now it's time for the solicitation. So this is the act of formally asking someone for a donation and providing the person an opportunity to engage through a financial contribution. Okay. So there's lots of different ways that organizations engage their donors. So one is that they have major donors, right? So when you're looking at a major gift, you're asking a question like you think you already know the answer to. It's probably not the first time you're asking this person for a contribution. It's not a new donor. It's probably someone who's been engaged with the organization for a long time. They have a very close relationship with you, and you've done your homework to know that they are ready to make a larger commitment and have the capacity to give a larger commitment. When you're asking for smaller gifts, these are great for new donors. And what you want to do is give a couple of different range options. You usually see that strategy in an annual letter or an annual appeal, or maybe at a fundraising event, different options of saying, a gift at this amount will help us achieve this. A gift at that amount will help us achieve that. It's really giving people an option and really tying it to the impact of the organization and the organization's work can be really helpful for those smaller gifts and newer gifts. For corporations, you want to make the opportunity feel like that is truly a partnership, that you're not walking in with a hand out, that you're walking in with a handshake, for them to be able to support your mission and you to be able to support their corporate goals as well through their corporate social responsibility efforts and other community and employee engagement efforts. Okay. But all in all, what you want to do is make solicitations easy to give, right? You want to make it easy on your board members to have these conversations and to do this work. And you want to make it easy for your donors to give to your organization. Okay, so then what else do we want to do? We want to steward our donors, right? So there's lots and lots and lots of data that says donor retention is a challenge. It's a struggle. It's the percentages are not great out there. And stewardship can help you retain your donors. In fact, it's imperative for you to retain your donors. So stewardship is a process of acknowledging, thanking, and engaging donors after their gift has been made. So obviously, many gifts are given online, and oftentimes the automatic donation receipt is provided. But really what you want to do beyond that is give them a more personal thank you, to say how thankful you are for their gift, and let them know what that gift will do. So we all know that those automated receipts really just go in a file. They don't necessarily make you feel good. So give them an acknowledgement that makes them feel good and makes them feel seen and heard for their gift. And make sure that you don't ask them for another donation the first time they hear from you. So we hear a lot from donors that their biggest pet peeve is that the first time they heard from the organization after their gift is for another ask. So we don't want to be doing that. We want to be giving them other ways to engage with our organization before making that ask. Impact reporting. Regularly update your donors on the tangible impact of their gift. You can do that through newsletters. You can do that through social media. You can do that through personal letters. You can do that through phone calls, coffee dates, inviting them to see your work in action. But until a donor says it's too much information, err to the side of giving them everything you've got. You've got a great story to tell. They want to know that they're involved in something impactful. So don't be shy about sharing your successes. And then ongoing engagement, right? Just like you did in your cultivation stage, keep them involved, keep them engaged. It keeps their attention on your organization, makes them know that they're important to you, and helps you get ready for that next gift. Okay. And that's going to nurturing and maintaining that relationship, making sure that you want it to be a long one, and you want it to be a long-term option for their philanthropy. So really building that long-term loyalty. Okay. All right, good. Well, I've certainly talked a lot. Kara, is there anything in the questions that we can answer? I know we've got another section.
Yep, we have. Let's keep going, and then I bet Lavon's doing such a great job of answering. So we'll keep going. That way we can hit all of our content, and then we can always add it too. So great.
Awesome.
Okay. Longevity with your donors, like that just wrapped it so nicely. I thought that was a perfect chef's kiss on that fundraising. That's what you're looking for, is that long-term relationship with your donors, right? Okay, let's kind of switch gears here and talk about committees. Now, I would imagine if we were all together, some of you would be like, yes, committees, I love it. And others might be like, oh, really? But you know what? Regardless, they're necessary. So let's make them as impactful and as efficient as we possibly can, right? So let's dive into what we see often when we see effective committees work. What do they have in common? First off, you're probably going to be really sick and tired of hearing me say clear expectations and accountabilities, because that's really the foundation to this, as well as when I talked about earlier when you're recruiting. But when we see really effective committees work, those committees, the members themselves have a clear understanding what their role is on that committee, and the committee as a whole has a true understanding of what their role is. So we never want committees to be set just because, or because we've always had it. We want committees doing something for the organization, right? Filling a gap in the organization health. And so those committees also have those expectations. A great way to do this is to have job descriptions for your committee members that are sitting on those committees. So a job description for the committee, and then also a charter for the committee, a purpose statement, and making sure that you have some of those expectations set. When we have effective committees, we see diverse and skilled members. So we have members who are relevant, have relevant expertise, relevant engagement, maybe connection to the mission, and are willing to invest time and energy into the work, because committees do require that work time. We also want members that have diverse viewpoints to really promote balanced discussion, which results in better decision making at the committee level, right? So just like you might have a matrix for a board as a whole, you might consider a matrix for a committee, doing the same thing, identifying who do you have on the committee and what perspectives or experiences or expertise are needed on that committee. Having strong goal and task alignment. So just ensuring that your committee, again, is fulfilling that need. So looking at your strategic plan, for example, as an organization, and identifying how can our committees help support these goals and strategies in our strategic plan. Effective committees have an annual work plan. It's a really fun activity to do at the beginning of the year to set your goals for the year, and then it's fun to be able to hold the committee accountable to that throughout the year and see that progress as you move along, and it really shows, we really are doing a lot of work here. We see effective committees have something in common, and that's having a strong leader in that chair role. There's a true key to success here in ensuring that you have a strong leader in that role. Now, we'll talk more about that here, but let's stop there and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Well-organized meetings. So having structured agendas, good time management, which that strong leader can do with the meeting, clear follow-ups to ensure that there's accountability and progress. We see committees, meetings might end with, okay, here's what we agreed we would do before the next meeting, and then starting the next meeting with, okay, how did we do? Sharing progress updates for the things that we said we would do at the last meeting. So just bookending those meetings and ensuring you keep that accountability and keep that progress moving forward. Even if the update is, I just didn't get to it. Life happened and I didn't get to it, but I'll do it before the next meeting. Just keeping that progress and keeping it top of mind. We also want to make sure we're having active communication with the full board. We have to remember that there may be some individuals on the committee that are not on the board. So having a clear communication loop for decisions that have happened at the board that might affect the committee or vice versa is happening. So really think through, what does that communication look like for your organization? Is it that the committee chair is on the board and that's how the information is being decided between the committees and the board? Or is it a different way? Maybe we're making minutes available to all. Okay. Having annual adjustments and assessments as needed. So just checking in, celebrating your successes at the end of the year, and really using that work plan to check in on progress. But also we see committees, how important it is to have capacity for flexibility, because we know that the needs of an organization might change over the year. And so being able to know how that committee can flex in order to meet the needs of the organization. In addition, every board member should be an active member of one committee based on their interests. So a lot packed into this one statement here. So we know there's some exceptions if there are executive committee members or officers that are sitting on executive committee, and they might also sit on, let's say, finance committee, for example. Your treasurer might be on the executive and on the finance committee. So there's an exception. But we really like to see when members are just on one committee, so they don't get stretched too thin, right? And that we're asking members, what committee would you like to be on? We don't want to assume just because someone holds a profession that that's what they want to do in their volunteer time. So just making sure we're asking that question and aligning to their interests will help with the longevity on the committee. Okay. So setting clear expectations. I mentioned that job description for each committee earlier. Here's an outline of what you could include on your job descriptions. So you want to have an overall purpose statement of the committee. It's really the vision of the committee that everybody can understand and rally around. Having your responsibilities highlighted specifically. What are the responsibilities of the committee? You might want to outline your membership. So who can serve on the committee? Is it just board members? Is it board members and community members? Whatever that is for your organization, ensuring that it's outlined in your description and documented. Thinking about your meeting cadence and documenting that. We know it can change through the years as leadership on the committee change, but just making sure that we are communicating that with everyone so there's no surprises. How often you meet, maybe what type of meeting it is. Considering, are there any staff roles that needs to support the committee and what does that look like? Again, just making sure that we're not leaving anything up for assumption and that we're documenting what we expect those roles to be. Having a plan for who's overseeing, taking and setting the agenda and the minutes and documenting that into your committee description. And then the final one there, accountability. This is one of my favorite scenarios to run groups through is what happens if the committee is not effective or if a committee member isn't participating? How are you going to approach that as a group? Who will be responsible for leading that work and really documenting what that accountability process is so you have a clear plan if that comes up, if that situation arises. Okay. Let's talk about our committee chairs, our champions of the world here. This committee chair is the key to the success of the committee. This is your champion of the work. And when we see successful committee chairs, we see them having these things in common. Likely, when you think about it, it won't surprise you, but we see committee chairs that have really clear leadership and organizational skills. You know what? They might not be the expert of that committee. So if it's a development committee, they might not be an expert fundraiser, but can they clearly organize and lead a group into making decisions, into having thoughtful discussion? They might be a good committee chair. We see committee chairs that effectively communicate and connect through regular updates and really just being an excellent communicator in that role as being important. They should be participating in any recruitment and onboarding activities. That committee chair should have a really clear idea of what skills or expertise they need on the committee to be successful, so they should participate in those activities. Ensuring that they can delegate and empower. So committee chairs are not those that can do all the work, right? But that they can delegate and empower others to do the work. Relationship building is incredibly important, and for that committee chair that they can connect, not maybe get along with everybody, but can they connect each other and connect to all members of the committee. Creating that culture of inclusivity and engagement, making sure everybody has the opportunity to participate on the committee, has the opportunity to participate in discussion, maybe having some facilitation skills might be helpful. That they have an understanding of nonprofit operations, especially for that nonprofit, right? And that they can evaluate how effective the organization is. So if you think about leaders that you've seen, maybe in your workplace, and you know those good leaders, those are the kind of people you want as your committee chairs to really set up success for the committee. Okay, Well, we're coming right at end here. I saw Jenny pop back on. We have our emails in here if you want to follow up with us. I'm going to check out the questions as well. And then if you're interested in hearing more from Hedges, we have a quarterly newsletter filled with all kinds of goodies and free templates and so forth. So you can do that there. But while I check out the questions, Jenny, do you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. Really awesome job. This was a content heavy webinar for us. And I feel like you guys delivered in the sense that there's so much good content that we're all taking away from this. I learned a lot. I talk about boards every day, and I still learned a lot from you all. So I really appreciate it for you to be here. We have another great webinar coming up, and it's coming up in about a month. We're actually going to do this webinar as a LinkedIn Live webinar, which is a little bit of a different format for us. So we'd love for you to follow us over on LinkedIn. It's pinned on our page. Lavon's going to drop that link in the chat. I feel like a YouTube influencer, like and follow or something, but over there in the chat, there's going to be that link that you can start following us over on the Boardable LinkedIn page as well. And then May 20th at 12 p.m. Eastern, another friend of ours in the nonprofit space, Christy Howard Schultz, will be hosting that or co-hosting that with me. And we're going to have a great time over there as well. I'm going to try to do this on the fly, which is a little bit always a little scary, but I'm going to try to do this on the fly. As we wrap up, I was able to pull this word cloud together. So I went off camera for a couple of minutes, pulled the word cloud together. And these were some of the terms that popped up for a lot of you. There might be a misspelling there, but we're on the fly there. So anyways, wanted to share this with everybody as well. We are right at 1 o'clock. There's some great questions still in the chat. We'll follow up with you all. Clearly a lot of excitement, interest in these topics that we've talked about with the team at Hedges. Karen, Erin, thank you so much for being here. And we will hopefully have you all back and share more of this great content with our customers, our prospects, and sort of our nonprofit community at large. So thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks, Jenny. I popped it in earlier, but we do have a survey if anybody wants to give feedback on the session. Just popped it back in.
Absolutely. Yes. Please do fill out that survey. We're always trying to make these sessions better. And I know Hedges would appreciate the feedback as well. So thank you so much. Thanks, guys, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you.